Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys if locking diffs are actually needed to do off-roading, and then just the benefits of locking diffs. I'm going to be using my Ineos Grenadier as a test vehicle. I think it's the best vehicle to demonstrate locking diffs because it does not have a fancy traction control system. Let's get into it. So quickly, if you're not familiar with this car, this is a 2024 Ineos Grenadier. It is a new car on the US market. Now this car comes with a solid axle in the front, and in the rear it does not have any sort of sway bar disconnect. Now what this does come with is a full-time four-wheel drive system, a center locking differential, and low range. And then it does come with a rear as well as a front diff lock. You notice with the icons, the rear diff lock has the X over the back axle to indicate that it's locking that differential front there in the front. And with center diff locks, they'll typically have the X over the center with that little depiction to indicate that it's locking the center. This one's a little bit different because it has this ball shifter. That's why it doesn't have that icon. On this first go, I'm going to be Mr. Ego that says, I don't need four-wheel drive low, I don't need lockers. And I'll show you guys why this is a mistake. So in four-wheel drive high, no lockers. And would you look at that? We're not going anywhere, and on top of that, we're just kind of revving the crap out of the engine. And eventually, we'll overheat the transmission because we're really pushing the powertrain to the limit. So this is why if you're gonna go up steep stuff, unless you're going super fast because you got like a Razor or something, put it in four-wheel drive low. It's super easy, right? Every single car you put it in neutral, and most cars are pretty quick with the systems. This one, boom. So now we're gonna go up in four-wheel drive low, and you'll notice that I've got way more torque now going down. Now I'm still gonna get stuck here because power distribution. Right? So in four-wheel drive low with the center diff unlocked, what the car is doing is it is just sending, it's not going to send, it's not a perfect 50-50 split front to rear. That's what the center diff lock does, is it makes it so that the power goes perfectly front to the rear. So it's just kind of sending power basically to the wheel that's spinning the most. That's just how it goes. So now we've got the center diff locked in four-wheel drive low. Okay, now what this does is, like I said, 50% of the power to the front, 50% to the rear, but it doesn't equally distribute it among the wheels. So what you notice is I'm able to get up a little bit higher, but now same thing. I'm starting to, you notice, I'm starting to dig in again. Okay. Now that's happening because it's not evenly distributing the power from one wheel to the other in the front axle and in the rear axle. So what will happen is one of them will start spinning and digging in, and it just sends all the power to that wheel. This doesn't have a fancy active braking system, and so that's what happens. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lock the rear differential. Okay? This is going to make it so that the power, again, center diff is locked. So 50-50 front to rear. So 50% of the power that is going to the rear is now split 50-50, right? So one wheel in the rear is getting 50% and the other rear wheel is getting 50% that is going to the rear. So what this does now is it gives us this push from the rear. And you'll notice that we're still spinning, but we got up, I would say a little bit, not that much higher. But we got up a little bit higher compared to before. So it might seem hopeless at this point, right? When you don't have fancy traction control stuff. And you can see the difference with the tire marks, right? As we're going as we're going up here. Hopefully you can see that. Now we're going to lock the front differential. This is going to send, now again, 50-50 front to rear, and now we've got 50-50 side to side, front and rear. So everything is getting 25% of the power. Everything is completely locked up. And now what you will see here is it does make a little bit of a fuss out of it, but because it's not sending all the power to the wheel that's spinning, the other wheel that is still getting grip gets power, we're able to finally muscle through it. At this point in the video, if you're new to off-roading, I have most likely convinced you that diff locks are the end-all be-all, that you need to go and buy a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon with the front and the rear lockers. But here's the deal. You can actually get around diff locks. Let me show you. May I present you with the Toyota Land Cruiser. Now this is the previous generation Land Cruiser, so it does have a 2-speed transfer case, but you notice that it only has a center diff lock. It does not have a front or rear diff lock. So let's take it up the same exact hill that the Grenadier needed to be triple locked for and see what happens. Just to make this comparison even, we're going to start off in full bro mode. So 4-wheel drive, high, no diff locked, none of that. And you'll notice, and again, this has fancy traction control systems. You'll notice that it gets right up. What is it doing? It is taking the torque It's clamping on the caliper, right? The wheel is, if there's any sort of spin, clamping down there on the caliper and taking that torque and distributing it to the wheel that does happen to have traction. And it makes a big difference. Now, obviously, that is not how you want to off-road. What you want to do is have it in 4-wheel drive low, which is super easy in the Land Cruiser. And then our multi-terrain select, we're actually going to put to rock. And then we will lock our center differential. Just the parking sensor, sorry about that. But that's how you actually want to off-road with this. But you will note that if you have a fancy traction control system, you can get through stuff that an old school vehicle can't get through without having all of the diffs locked. And for those of you saying tires and weight, this has narrower tires than the Grenadier, and there is a weight difference. This weighs just over 6,000 pounds. The Grenadier weighs about 6,500 pounds, but the Grenadier does have bigger tires. So like, I feel like they're pretty similar. And this has independent suspension in the front. So the Grenadier, you know, should have better articulation. This does have Toyota's KDSS system. Now you notice with this, it's even smoother, right? Because of 4-wheel drive, you can hear the traction control system working there now. You can see it's really going. Now you might be wondering, why was it silent the first time that we went up? And what I have noticed is that the traction intervention is more aggressive in 4-wheel drive low than it is in 4-wheel drive high. And I think that kind of makes sense, right? They assume if you're in 4-wheel drive high, you're not going to want random caliper braking all the time. You're going to want a little bit of power distribution change, but not a lot. So this now might lead to some of you being a little bit confused because, well, I thought diff locks were the end all be all. So as you can see, differential locks are extremely useful, especially with vehicles that do not have fancy modern traction control systems like the Toyota Land Cruiser or like Land Rovers or Jeeps or Fords. There's so many vehicles that have these fancy active braking systems. But here is the most practical advice that I can give all of you as someone who has taken a ton of different vehicles off-road. I have literally taken every type of vehicle off-road. I took a Cadillac Escalade and a Volvo XC90 off-road a couple of years ago. I've taken Wranglers off-road. I had a Ford Bronco Raptor. I've actually had several Raptors. I've taken Land Cruisers off-road. I've taken Land Rovers off-road. I have taken every type of vehicle off-road. What I have discovered is that the fancy traction control systems are really useful on loose terrain, steep climbs that are not all that articulated. They're actually better than differential locks because they perfectly distribute the power. And so it makes the climb, or, you know, if you're just on a flat terrain, but it's like really deep sand or something like that, it seems to help out a lot with just navigating that situation a little bit easier. However, where differential locks will always win out is in articulated situations. If you get in a lot of situations off-road where your vehicle is going to be really articulated, these fancy traction control systems can only go so far. That's where I've discovered the limits with this Land Cruiser, is when I'm really articulated, the system has to sit there and work and work and work, and sometimes it eventually gets through. Sometimes it can't get through, and it's like, man, I wish I had a differential lock in the front or the rear to help out with that. And so you have to be honest with yourself with the type of off-roading that you're planning on doing. If you're just going to be going down a lot of kind of like well-paved, not paved, but well-groomed dirt roads that just might have traction issues, right, because it's slippery, an advanced traction control system is going to be the best route for you to go. Make sure your vehicle has at least that. If you're going to be getting into a lot of more difficult stuff, articulated stuff, you're probably going to want differential locks. Can you technically do it with a system? Yes, but you have to sit there and be patient and work through the situations, and sometimes you have to deal with not being able to get through an obstacle because you just lack the proper equipment for that. So hopefully that shows you guys the actual benefits of differential locks, and hopefully that helps you out with determining which off-roader you should go based on the off-roading you're going to end up doing.